Hello everybody, welcome back to the shop, and got something I'm pretty excited about here. This is my new to me Logan model 1925, and I'll talk a little bit about it. This is pretty much as found. Wanted to do a little bit of a walk around before I really got into it. I had to disassemble it for moving and then cart it here and reassemble it, so in the process I did some cleaning, but that's about it. Otherwise, as found. And also I did a little bit of work on this tailstock because of some problems that I'll talk about. But other than that, as found, it's my first Logan. I've been an Atlas guy until now. So before I get into anything else with it, just a little survey. So this, according to my lookup of the serial number, which is back here on the top of the ways, this was built in 1965, which makes it a year older than me. I'm pretty stoked about that, and therefore I'm forgiving of a lot of blemishes it has on it because I can relate. And also, it's got a 43-inch bed with 24 inches between centers. It has 5.5-inch clearance, as it's a 11-inch lathe. Looks a whole lot like the 10. The Logan 11 looks a whole lot like the Logan 10, but there are some pretty big differences, particularly when you get into the spindle here, which we'll talk about. It has the V-ways, V here and here. And that's different from what I've had until now. All my Atlas equipment had flat ways. I don't know whether this bed is flame hardened or not. Someplace I found on the web said that there would be an H behind the serial or the model number if it was. On the other hand, another place I found on the web said the fact that the serial number is found on the bed back here indicates that it's flame hardened. So I don't know, but some of these beds came that way, some did not. And apparently it's a big deal. That if it was flame hardened, then it would probably be fully inspected. In terms of no significant wear. All right, the spindle. This is what really sets it apart from what I've had to deal with so far. Is 1 5/8 large bore, and the spindle itself, the thread is 2 1/4 by 8 threads per inch. The taper inside the spindle is proprietary, I think. That's the collet adapter. So I'll measure it out at some point and verify that it is the proprietary Logan taper. Let's see. I said it's a model 1925. It is, and the only difference between this and the model 1955, which I think is more common, is the fact that it has in the cabinet 3 drawers on this side. In 1955, this is just a plain pedestal. So if you have a 1955, you have the same machine. And as I said, this is it's a major upgrade over the 10. It's often compared to the South Bend Heavy 10, which I've never owned one of those, so I can't speak to that. That's just what you see on the web. This whole thing with the cabinet and the lathe itself weighs 870 pounds, which is why I had to disassemble it. I had no way of picking up 870 pounds and transporting it. And I bought it down in North Carolina, and I'm in Virginia, so that's why it took a while to get it here. I've mentioned a while back that I had bought this thing, had it on the way. It just took that long for me to get the logistics together to go down and get it. Some other things about it. Let's see. Oh, this the carriage is driven by a clutch. New thing to me. All the Atlas equipment is driven just by a half nut, which this has a half nut, and you can use that for threading. Or I mean, that is what you use for threading, but for just typical turning, you use the clutch, and that saves wear and tear on your lead screw and on your the half nut. So that's a nice feature. Also, what I thought was interesting is it has an oil bath down here inside of the apron. There's a reservoir, and I can't figure out how I'm supposed to fill it. According to one drawing, there's supposed to be a hex cap screw right here that you would remove to fill it. The only one I see, I'm afraid to remove because I think it's holding the apron itself to the carriage. So I've got to figure that out. Accessories that came with it include, I got a 3-jaw, missing the 4-jaw. It has an entire collet, 5C collet set with the one of these style closers, which I've never had the opportunity to work with one of these systems before, so I'm really excited about that. It's got a steady rest, a follow rest. It's got not one but 2 micrometer carriage stops. It has a lantern tool post, and it also has a BXA Aloris style tool post, but that's actually too big for this. All right, let's see. So some of the issues that I know the thing has, and that I'll be correcting from here on out. I'm going to hold off on anything major cosmetic. The romper room paint job is because it was in a shop class, high school shop classes. Known things I have to deal with. I've got to put a different power cord on it. I'll use that opportunity to make a video comparing the static phase converter that this has to the VFD that's on my mill, because it is 3-phase. The belts, I'm going to have to replace those. Okay, so the belts. Originally, when I disassembled it, I left these belts in there, thinking that, well, you know what, I want to get it running and just play with it as is. But then there's some really bad spots in this thing. So I said, no way, I'm just going to go ahead. I ordered new belts for it. I did not go with the, oh, here we go. That was kind of the kicker right there. So I'm not going with link belts. I'm going to bite the bullet, and I'm going to disassemble this headstock, which should be a lot easier than the Atlas. It actually has this bearing retainer unscrews, and then I think everything slides out in a lot easier fashion than with the Atlas. So that'll be a video pulling this spindle head or headstock spindle. And another issue that this has that I'll try to address at that same time, it has the same sort of arrangement as the Atlas, in that when you're going to engage the back gears, you pull this pin out on the bull gear, and that disengages this section of the spindle, or the spindle from this pulley section here. And this ought to be spinning completely freely right now, but it binds as it turns right here. So something's out of whack, and I'm going to see if I can get that straightened out. So that's another known issue. And this tailstock has some issues, which I'm going to do a video on this tailstock and the problems it has, and I'll refer to this other guy's video. It seems to have had the same problem. I believe it's something in the design that causes issues. And this clutch here, I can only operate this thing. I've got this in like the highest gear possible right now. reserve that down there. I'm not sure the clutch is working the way it should. I'll need to really get it under power to say for sure, but not positive that's working the way it should. And that's about it. I think if I can get those things squared away, I'll have another lathe to play with. Here's a little chuckle for you. Somebody was going through this paperwork a while back, good while back, pricing out some of the parts. A few cents for this, a few cents for that, 10 whole bucks for that, a wheel for $13. That part right there you can still get from Clousing. You have to cross-reference the number, that's the old number. But instead of $18.20, it is now $348.